Hi folks, thanks for watching Thurston County Connection. Today I'm spending time with our public defenders in the Thurston County Public Defense Office. But before I head that way, here's a message from the Director of the Thurston County Public Defense, Patrick O'Connor.
Hello, I'm Patrick O'Connor, the Director of Thurston County Public Defense. Some people may not know it, but both the United States and Washington constitutions require government to provide lawyers to citizens if they can't afford one in a criminal proceeding. No matter the crime you may have been accused of, Thurston County Public Defense is here to guarantee the ability for you to exercise your constitutional right to effective legal representation in a court of law, regardless of your financial ability to afford it. In addition to adult representation, we also represent our community's low-income youth accused of a crime, parents who face losing their children in a dependency proceeding, and vulnerable citizens facing civil commitment related to a mental illness. Our attorneys are committed to protecting and defending the rights of our clients through zealous, conscientious, and compassionate legal advocacy. Our work also plays an often invisible but important role in keeping our community safe. While protecting our clients' legal rights, we also strive to identify paths to help our clients live a better life. When appropriate, we work to connect our clients to services that might include therapeutic courts, family aid, substance abuse treatment, mental health services, and employment. We are committed to community safety and guiding our clients to the help and resources they need to be successful. The bottom line, our office has a dedicated and diverse team of lawyers and staff. They bring passion and years of skill to their jobs. We care deeply about the health and safety of Thurston County and embrace our role in maintaining this county's special quality of life. We're located at the main Thurston County Courthouse campus at 2000 Lake Ridge Drive, Southwest and Building 6. Thank you.
Patrick, we've heard a little bit about your activities as a public defender and running that office. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more. I know one of our concerns from the commission is the high cost of doing business. Maybe you could relate a little bit to that, but it is a necessary business, and it seems like we're always doing things unfunded from the state. So just maybe a broader perspective on what you're doing every day.
Sure. Well, Commissioner, our mission here is to defend and protect our clients' constitutional rights, one person at a time. And of course, the Constitution ensures that anybody accused of a crime that can't afford an attorney is provided one at public expense. And so in Thurston County, we're no different than most counties in which the overwhelming majority of individuals that are touched by the criminal justice system can't afford an attorney. Washington State has some standards on public defense that have been adopted by the State Bar Association that give guidance to the county on what level of public defense counties are obligated to provide. And I can tell you that we here at Thurston County Public Defense provide very high quality public defense. And as you know, as a commissioner, we work with you guys on the appropriate funding. There are certain obligations that Thurston County has to provide, and like as you mentioned, it is high cost, and the truth of the matter is the cost of public defense has only risen over the past several years and will probably continue to increase, and so there's always county budget constraints that we face and continue to face, and hopefully there'll be a remedy in the future at the state level to provide counties like ours some more funding to fund public defense.
Well, it seems like it is unfunded mandates oftentimes, and it seems like there's about 3/4 of the other states around our country that the state does pick up most of it because they recognize the importance. And I guess I also recognize the importance of what you do. But you have made some changes recently. I've noticed it in budget activities where we seem to be saving money And under your leadership, I think we're headed in the right direction. Could you give us a little breakdown of maybe what other states do, how they fund it compared to what we're doing? Because we're always taking money out of our general fund to make this happen. And don't get me wrong, it's a very important activity that you're involved in. But oftentimes I relate back to the state unfunded mandate activities, and every year they add more to that and no funding to go along with it to provide the service.
Well, what I can say is I'm very proud of the standards for public defense that Washington State has. Something as a career public defender that we're very proud of. They set the bar very high, and they recognize that quality public defense includes much more than just the right to an attorney standing next to you in court defending you. It's essentially a right to a full defense, that your cases are investigated, that you have the funding to hire an expert if necessary, and a whole host of other services that really distinguish Washington State from other states in terms of what the state expects public defense to look like for its citizens. As you mentioned, though, Washington State ranks somewhere towards the bottom of the rest of in terms of state funding for public defense as compared to the rest of the country. In Thurston County, we receive about 4% of our funding for our public defense is funded at the state level. And so we have, essentially in the United States, we have two different systems of public defense funding. There's either a fully funded state system or what we have in Washington State where it's partial. And I know there's efforts being made by various organizations, including our statewide public defender agencies, as well as cities and counties around the state of Washington, as they try to comply with the state standards and properly fund public defense, but looking to the state for additional funding when counties and cities are facing the budget constraints that they face.
Now, recently you ended up hiring, I believe, some investigators or an investigator and putting more staff attorneys on, and that's equated to a savings for the taxpayers here in Thurston County. Could you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Sure. What we have done in the past couple of years with the full support of the board, which we're very appreciative of, is really making that investment in our county department for public defense to meet the demands of court appointments. So when we're appointed to represent a client from either district court, superior court, or adult superior court or juvenile court, we can't refuse any client. So we take all clients appointed to us. And what we've traditionally done as a department is we've had to rely upon outsourced attorney work just based on the volume of work. And so with the support of the board, we were able to hire some more attorneys for our department to keep more of those clients with trained, salaried public defenders. And we've seen some of the benefits from that. Certainly having staff attorneys available all day long with the funding that we have has really benefited our entire criminal justice system. And as you mentioned, we tying back to the state standards on public defense and case law, clients that are appointed a public defender also have the attorney has an obligation a duty to investigate all criminal cases. And so with the support of the board, we were able to hire the department's first internal investigator to investigate cases on behalf of the attorneys and behalf of the clients. It's been a tremendous benefit. It really has streamlined that duty of the attorney. It forms more of a teamwork environment to get the work done and being highly responsive to cases. So there may be a case this morning in which an investigation needs to take place immediately and head out into the county to start interviewing folks, and that happens very frequently now with our staff investigator. But tying back to the constraints that you mentioned earlier with budget, our state standards of indigent defense would say that our public defender's office should have one investigator for every 4 lawyers, and we have over 20 lawyers and 1 investigator. So it puts us in a position of having to come to the Board of County Commissioners to try to get in compliance with those ratios, and the board having, and our county having budget constraints. And so without additional funding, it makes it difficult.
So we're still going out and contracting a certain amount of that investigative activity then, is that right?
Yeah, we are. We have to. And so we have one investigator. We represent well over 2,000 clients a year, and he's very good, but he's not that good. And so we do have to pay out of pocket, so to speak, for the additional investigative work that has to take place. So we'll continue to try to address that in the future, but those standards at the state level will not change.
And then I understand we're going to be talking to Larry about some of the actual defensive activity that takes place with the different attorneys here in your office.
Yeah, what you'll hear a little bit about is some of the collective energy in the past couple years to try to make this a better criminal justice system for all of Thurston County. Make it one in which we can continue to pursue innovative justice initiatives. It's a sort of a common thing that people are hearing about all across the country is criminal justice reform, and what does that really mean, and what are we doing here in Thurston County? And we are doing a lot to try to, frankly, get the best use out of our taxpayer dollars, but also for our clients and our clients' perspective is to really put them in the best position to be successful in our community. And with the work that we've been doing with our other justice stakeholders, the prosecuting attorney's office and the court, we continue to make progress. There's still a ways to go, but we've been able to see some of the early results of these efforts in the past 12 months.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I think we'll be moving on to Larry here shortly, and we'll get a little different perspective. Okay, we're here with Larry Jefferson, Senior Defense Counsel here in the Public Defender's Office. And maybe, Larry, you could tell us a little bit about how you came to be involved in this and maybe a little bit about your background.
Hey, well, gosh, one day I was at the Regional Justice Center and I was walking through the hallway and said, you know, they're hiring at Thurston County Public Defense. This is about 15 years ago. And I said, I'll give it a shot. And the reason I did is because I grew up here in Thurston County. My mom came here to go to Evergreen in 1980 and went to the Evergreen State College, and I've been in Thurston County ever since. And so I went to Garfield Elementary over on the west side. A lot of my friends and I went to Jefferson and Capitol High School. And then I actually went to Alternative High School. Here downtown, Thurston County, off campus. Give a plug for my old high school. And then after Evergreen, I went on to law school, worked as a public defender up in Seattle for about 8 years. And then, luckily enough, Sally Harrison hired me here for Thurston County Public Defense. And I've been here for 15 years. The felony supervisor. I'm a senior defense attorney. And I'm right now in charge from the defense side of a project, The First Look, that I shared with Wayne Graham with the prosecutor's office.
Great. Well, it sounds to me like you're a local success story as well, with all your other accomplishments. And I know you guys are always trying to figure out ways to provide the best defense and get people back on the right track and get them a fair shake in court.
No, that's exactly what we're all about. And so really what we see in a lot of cases is that that there will be a case where there may need to be a trial, but really there's a person that there's something else going on. And the more that we can get to whatever that something else is, whether it's housing, whether it's part of the opioid crisis, or whether it's part of education, about getting that person. So it's all about getting back to the community.
Mm-hmm. I know you intercede when need be on mental health issues, for an example. So there's a lot of people out there that do have a lot of problems. You guys get to the bottom of them and get them headed in the right direction, it sounds like to me. Could you elaborate a little bit more on how First Look, how that all fits with the program?
Well, I think the first thing it fits with is a relationship. And what I'm talking about is Wayne Graham and I have worked together for a long period of time, and we've done a lot of cases together in and out of court. And one thing that we noticed is that some people that that he would prosecute and that I'd represent, they'd keep coming back. And we had this belief that once we had done our thing on the case, that someone else would work with whatever they needed on the community. And what we're realizing is that wasn't happening. And so what happens when a person gets a felony on their record, they can't do certain things, like get an apartment, get certain jobs. And so we were sort of handcuffing certain people that we really actually wanted to help. So why I talk about a relationship is that our offices actually had a history of just, hey, let's take everything to trial. Because that's what we do. We're lawyers. We want to get in the case. We want to litigate all the issues and all those things. But in some cases, if the issues aren't about litigation and they're more about, hey, where can we get you substance abuse treatment? Where can we get you mental health treatment? Wait, you want to work? We're all about working. And so it's about trying to do, instead of waiting, it's about doing those things now. So what I mean by that, if someone else has another obligation, why have them sit at the Thurston County Jail for 6 months? Let's take care of the case now, get them off to that other obligation. If we realized in a lot of our drug cases, maybe about 2 years ago, the prosecutor's office always had the same offer for a first-time person. Well, you want to individualize what happens for certain people. For certain folks, it's important to get them to drug court. For certain folks, they don't need drug court, and you don't want them to be there. You want those folks to be with the highest treatment needs and the highest criminality. You want those folks in drug court so you can get your eyes on them. But if you got a person, all you have to say is, we don't want to see you in court, and they're like, I can comply with that, then that's what we want to do, and it's going to save us, I think it's going to save us from having people in the jail for long periods of time, getting multiple bench warrants, and just sort of clogging up the system. So why do that?
Yeah. I mean, I guess from the budget perspective, because that's what I deal with most, I see that adjudicating or dealing with that particular individual's situation, whatever it might be, doing it early saves the taxpayers a lot of money, and it helps that individual get on track if that's at all possible.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to do, and I've got some paperwork here, and the numbers reflect that. We've been looking at numbers going back to 2015, 2016, 2017, and I looked at the numbers of 2018 of when basically the first year for the First Look program. Yeah. Within 0 to 30 days in 2018, we handled 375 cases. That's an astounding number, whereas in, let's say, 2016, they only handled 160. And so what this is a partnership that allows us to, what the prosecutors are very concerned about is about accountability. Sure. I mean, if the person's not taking responsibility, what are we doing here? And so what we want to do from the defense side is make sure that we look at every case the same. If there's a defense then to the case, then we want to maximize that as much as possible. But if it's about the person's willing to take accountability and they're saying, hey, I want to resolve this matter and I want to go to treatment, we want to set that up. And so we've been I think we've been crushing it, and I know for the numbers for so far for this year, for the first few months, we've either been above or right at what we did in 2018. So we're really excited to see if we can keep this going.
So it's a pretty good partnership, actually, with John Thunheine's office and the prosecuting attorney's office. That's where Wayne works.
That's right.
And that's where you guys got this all put together. And in the end, it saves the taxpayers money. And so I know that makes us happy from a budgeting perspective.
Well, I think...
And it's good for the citizen, too.
Absolutely. I think, we can't be, I can't look at a case and say, I want to resolve this case because I want to save money.
Oh, I know you.
And so what I want to do is I want to work with this person. I want to establish a really good bonding relationship with that person so that, sometimes it's very embarrassing to have to tell your defense counsel something that's going on in their life. And we all have issues. We've got family members. I mean, I'm a part of this community.
Sure.
And it's been one of the greatest experiences of my life to be able to sort of help someone through a tough situation. And you can see that I'm really emotional right now, but that's how much I care.
Sure.
And I would give it to Mr. Tunheim by allowing Wayne to work with me.
Sure.
It's been a great experience.
And it's all positive, the whole thing. I mean, everything ends up positive with, I'll give you and Wayne credit because I've been involved in this for a couple of years now. And you guys really put together a program that is beneficial to all parties concerned. Yeah. And I think if we had more interest, personal interest in what we're doing in government, I think we do a better job. And that's the bottom line. So,
absolutely.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And I'll just say one other thing about what we've been doing is that this ties in to a lot of other things that have been happening at the court with the Felony Leadership Improvement Project. So we've changed some of the court processes, and so by getting a lot of these cases in the first look umbrella, it makes it easier for my trial attorneys to be able to put their focus onto certain cases. And we each have 2 different teams that are working sort of as much as they can together to resolve these issues, and I think it's paying dividends.
Yep. Good example of what you're doing. I guess we're going to be talking to Robin here in a little bit,
okay.
And she's going to fill us in for another area, if you will. So thank you very much, Larry, for everything that you do.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay, see you.
All right.
Well, here we are with Robin Martin. She is a defense attorney, spending most of her activity over in the juvenile court. Maybe you could give us a little personal perspective of how you got into this and your view of public defense from the way you see it.
So I grew up in Olympia. I graduated from Olympia High School. And when I graduated from law school, I started working with the Attorney General's office, representing the department in dependency cases. So parents occasionally have their children removed due to allegations of abuse and neglect, and I represented the department in those actions. I have an undergraduate degree in psychology, which has come in very handy doing this work. Yeah. And when an opportunity arose to move back to Olympia and work for Thurston County Public Defense, I jumped on it. And because my prior work had been in working with children and families, I was very excited to work for the Juvenile Dependency Unit here in Thurston County. I've received a lot of training and have a lot of experience in adolescent brain development, in the impacts of trauma on families, and so that has been my primary focus and the area that I really enjoy working with. I represent juveniles in offender matters when they are accused of crimes, and I represent parents now when they are accused of abusing or neglecting their children and work with them towards reunification. And I think it really fits my skill set and my knowledge and my experience, particularly in seeing the impacts of trauma on children, the impacts of trauma on parents. I'm particularly interested in working with people who struggle with addiction, which often is a basis for my dependency cases, and often comes up in my juvenile offender matters as well.
You know, it sounds like everything fits, and not only are you a local success story, local ladies done well, but it sounds like whatever you're doing here from the public defense sector also must be working, because I see our juvenile population is going down, And I think that has some direct correlation to your understanding and the way things are handled.
I hope so. I hope so. Our juvenile population in detention right now averages about 10 youth in detention every day in a building that is meant to house about 80 youth. And I've been here almost 5 years now, and we've continued to see the juvenile population in detention get lower and lower over those 5 years. I don't think, of course, that that's due entirely to my work, but
you're doing a good job.
I do think it's important to stress to the court and to the members of the community that detention is not a positive place for youth. It really should be a last resort for children. Being detained is traumatic. And I also think it's important to remind the court and the rest of the players in the juvenile offender system that adolescent brains are not fully developed, and we can't and shouldn't expect youth to be able to think and process consequences of their decisions the way an adult does. They're still developing. Their brains aren't developed really fully until they're about 25 years old. And so we need to apply the law and apply the consequences differently than we do for adults.
Okay. Well, how about from your perspective, do you see us continuing down this same path for quite some time? I mean, it sounds like you're mixing your total background into solving a community problem. So do you see that continuing? I do. And I really hope it does. I hope that we continue to view detention as a last resort, incarcerating youth as a last resort. And I think that we will continue to recall the impacts of trauma in particular on families. In my dependency work, we are all acknowledging that separating children from their parents, even when there have been allegations of abuse and neglect, is traumatic both for children and parents. And so working towards reunification of children with their parents as quickly as possible is a continuing goal and something that we're working on as a community. We're trying to keep children with their families as long as it's safe and supported. So how about a little personal perspective on what you're doing on a daily basis, and maybe a success or two, or why you're so thrilled about what you're doing, because I can tell you're very interested. I am. I really do love this work. I really see being a public defender as being a voice in court for someone who typically has been voiceless, somebody who is disadvantaged and likely very scared to be in court and to be in front of a judge. About 90% of people accused of crimes are represented by public defenders. And in juvenile court, all of our youth essentially are represented by public defenders. And I really enjoy being able to be a voice for them, telling the court what they want to have happen with their case, delving into their backgrounds and helping to explain how we got here, and also helping to be part of the solution. Getting the youth or the parents that I represent what they need to be successful is really my favorite part of the job. I'm involved in 2 different treatment courts, and those are my favorite part of my job. I represent youth in our juvenile justice behavioral health alternative, so youth who are experiencing mental health issues or struggling with chemical dependency. And I represent parents in family recovery court, so parents who have had their children removed due to primarily chemical dependency. And my favorite day of my job all the time is graduation days. When we graduate a parent from family recovery court who has worked really hard to treat their addiction and to reunify with their children, or when we have a youth who has successfully participated in drug and alcohol treatment or mental health treatment, and we get to send them on their way, hopefully without any future court involvement. Those are absolutely the best days of my work, and I enjoy being in court and representing them through that process. Well, great. Thank you very much, Robin, for your insight of what's going on over at juvenile court.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to Thurston County Connection on Thurston Community Media. For more programming like this, visit the county's YouTube channel or tune in to Comcast Channel 3.